they were having some kind of survey or something. And at the beginning of the survey, after you write your name, like you had to select your ethnicity. And that was the first time in my life where I had to like ask myself, what is my ethnicity? And then there was a box that says white, Indian, Asian, black. And I was like, I almost ticked Asian and then I saw black. And then I'm like, okay, am I Asian or am I black?
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to another episode of the Melanated Files. My name is Ranzel, and today we're joined by two sisters, right? Karine and Natalie. Karine came to Japan with her mom in 1982. She was just 9 months old from the Republic of the Congo. Right? And her sister was born in Japan 2 years later in 1984 as well. So both of these sisters grew up in Japan. And then they later left Japan for South Africa around the ages of 10 and 12 and returned again after university to work and pursue a master's in Japan. And today they are both citizens of Japan. So it's a very, very unique story. So we're going to get into the story right now. Karine and Natalie, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
having
for
us.
having us.
Okay, so I want to get into it and ask you guys, what was it like growing up in Japan?
Well, when I came here, I was 9 month old baby. So for me, Japan is all I knew. But
Mm,
as I start going to kindergarten and so forth and start interacting with other Japanese children, that when I, was faced with the fact that, like, okay, I have different skin color from other children.
Yeah, for me as well, because we were one of those few foreign families in Japan at that time, and especially foreigners in Japan at that time are mostly Caucasian, male, working person, and not African little kids. So we really stood out everywhere that we
mm,
went. And I think for us, even though we were foreigners, we only knew Japan, we only spoke Japanese. We've never been outside of Japan until I think I was the age of 6. We went to Belgium. So until then, we haven't really even interacted with foreigners. So we didn't know what it meant to be this gaijin foreigners that they called us. So I remember my mom used to tell me when I was a kid, when people used to point fingers and say gaijin, gaijin, I used to say, what about me is gaijin? I don't speak gaikokugo, like foreign language. I've never been to gaikoku, like foreign countries. So what about me is gaijin really? And then the kids, kids have very much of an open mind. So when you spoke to those kind of logic to them, they'll be like, huh, that's true. You are just like us. And from that point onwards, they forget that we have different hair color, hair texture or skin color, and they would treat us just like every other kids. We will play, we will run around, scrape our knees, and all that type of stuff. So to be honest, I grew up most of my life in Japan, not really feeling or knowing that I was foreigner, or like feeling that I was a foreigner when I went to new places, but not knowing what is it to be a foreigner per se, because I never knew what foreign countries and what foreigners actually really did. So it was like a very weird mixture. And I always tell people that we felt like we knew we were foreigners in Japan, as in non-Japanese looking, but we were treated normally. We didn't really face racism and exclusion as much in terms of people that knew us from people who didn't know us maybe. But I remember feeling and knowing that I'm Black when I went to South Africa. So that's like the weird dynamics that in my personal experience I felt growing up in Japan.
What about you, Karine? Is it the same thing? Did you guys go to the same school, same kindergarten, same elementary school?
Yes, I would say it was easier, like she said, once they understand, where you came from and explain to them, they'll understand. But then it got more difficult as I went into secondary school. Secondary,
Mm,
yeah, secondary high school. Sorry, English is escaping out of my head today. Sorry. It was a bit more difficult because I don't know. I guess being teenager is already tough enough, but then the ijime, as they call, bullying, got
mhm,
pretty much worse when I started to go to secondary high school, and it was
mm,
really to the point where I stopped going to school.
Oh,
Yeah, it was really bad. And that was also part of the reason why my mom decided to take us to South Africa, because it was just too much. Yeah.
okay. So Natalie, for you, while you were in elementary school, right? Because you left Japan the first time for South Africa when you were in elementary school, right? So
Yeah.
you weren't in high school yet. Was there any ijime for you in elementary school?
There wasn't, but it's not from lack of trying. I did beat up few kids in my lifetime.
Okay.
So it was the case of those who could be talked to, I talked to, and those who couldn't, the fist did the talking. But other than that, I think also because we went to the same elementary school, there was already that thing of like she basically kind of pioneered and opened the door for me in a way because I wasn't the very first Black child entering the school premises. So like that had kind of simmered down, I guess, by the time that I went. And that has helped, as well as the fact that I think I was a bit more confrontational in a way. So I think that was like the two ways where I didn't face as much as of harsh treatment as I think my sister was exposed to.
Yeah, yes. At the time I had to like be the first one to go,
Yeah.
being all black, I mean all alone as a black child, and yeah, it was tough for me everywhere we went because my father was a professor. So we used to keep moving around from town, from place to place every year or two. So
Yeah, the longest we stayed in the
Yeah.
city was 2 years. So a year and a half to 2 years, we'll be in a different city, different prefecture,
yeah,
doing the whole thing all over
all
again, getting to know the place, getting through the time for people to accept us and get to know us, and for us to be normal within their part of the society. And just when we've like kind of settled and grew roots, we will move and do that all over again. So just that entry period, that transition period as we get to the new place, I think that's the time that used to be the toughest, except for the very last city we lived in Mie, where it was just continuous throughout. Yeah.
Okay, so you guys were residing in Kyoto first, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so again, so your father came in 1981 as a mech scholar, right, to get his PhD in, I believe, geophysics,
Yes.
right? Okay, so moving around, so you guys are uprooted. Well, I guess not really uprooted, but because of his job, you had to go to different like cities, and that was challenging. Like, how did you guys feel about moving to South Africa when your mom said, "Well, listen, we're going to South Africa." Me and your two sisters, your father's gonna stay and work. How did you guys feel about that?
Oh, we were scared to death at first because it's all we knew about. Okay, first of all, we thought Africa was like
living on trees,
yeah,
from the river,
riding on lion and so on.
So
And
yeah,
we watched the video Roots.
Yes,
That's slavery movie, and then we thought, okay, that is Africa, and then
because
now
we had no context of when in history that had happened. So we're like, oh, in Africa, there's still people to make them slaves.
yeah.
You know?
And then South Africa apartheid was going on, so we're like, okay, they're gonna enslave us, and this is where our mother wants to take us. Like,
Yeah.
why?
I remember when my mom sat me down and explained to me, I literally told her with a serious face, I said, but mom, I don't know how to live on trees. And she thought I was joking, but I really meant it. I really didn't know what life was waiting for us. And only news that we would get out of South Africa was about apartheid. We moved to South Africa in 94, November 94, and we started schooling in 95. So basically 94 is just the year where apartheid was ending and they were transitioning into democracy. So it was the right time per se, but it was still a difficult time in South Africa. So, the whole leaving the only home we've ever known in Japan to go to Africa, to a place where we only see on TV with big kids with big belly and flies on their face. And about the only information we knew about South Africa was apartheid. And we didn't know when we were going to get kidnapped to be enslaved, like in Roots. So we had a lot of anxiety. And my dad kept reassuring us that, like, if you don't like it, you can always come back. So for me, I thought it was a temporary move. I didn't realize how long of a temporary move. They kind of like, they kind of tricked me into thinking that it wasn't like a move. It was like, just for now, don't worry.
Okay. Wow. So how was it when you actually went on the soil in South Africa and you were experiencing everything firsthand? What was that like for you guys?
But I was excited when I landed because I could see so many people. Yeah, because I could see so many people like me, right? Because it was the first time in Japan growing up. There were pockets. There were pockets of Congolese community within Japan. So other people who came to Japan, like my father with the mixed scholarship, but then he was one of the first generation. So they're a bit younger. So their kids were also a bit younger than us. So we had our little Congolese community in Japan growing up, but we were dispersed all over. So we would only meet for New Year's or Christmas or like some special event like that when we'd gather from all over Japan. So I knew other kids who looked like me, who had hair like me in Japan, but like now real foreigners, like real Gaijin friends. We're gonna speak real Gaikokugo. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is exciting. I'm gonna make so many friends. And I didn't realize that not being able to speak English would kind of like get in the way of doing that. So like that was like a real wake up call once we actually did settle down here. I mean, not here in South Africa.
So what about you, Karine? What was your experience when you first landed?
Interesting experience when I went to school. I was like high school, and then because it was just after apartheid, and then it used to be all white school, and then now slowly by slowly, they started to accept colored children, the black
People of color.
People of color, yeah. And then they were having some kind of survey or something, and at the beginning of the survey, after you write your name, like you had to select your ethnicity. And that was the first time in my life where I had to like ask myself, what is my ethnicity? And then there was a box that says white, Indian, Asian, black. And I was like, I almost ticked Asian and then I saw black. And then I'm like, okay, am I Asian or am I black? Because that was the first time I ever asked myself, okay, what is it that what does it mean to be black? Because all I know is Japanese Asian culture. But then here there's another box says black African, but my skin is black, well, chocolate. But I don't know anything about being African. So I asked my teacher, like, I don't know what to take because I only know Japanese culture, but my skin is black. So which one am I? So the teacher told me, like, just tick all the box that you feel comfortable with. So Asian and black. Yeah, it was very interesting because that was the first time it made me start thinking and asking myself, like, what is it really to be black? Yeah, because in Japan, yeah, it was more about whether you were Japanese or you were foreigner, not really about, you're foreigner and then go further beyond and say you're black and this and that and that. It was either you were Japanese or you were not Japanese. And then that was the division point. But then now back when I leave Africa and then here in Cape Town or South Africa, they start asking me about, everywhere you go, they'll ask you like, where you from? What country and all this thing, and I'm like, no, I'm from Japan. And
it's a question we really struggled every time people would ask, where are you from? Because we're like, we are from Japan. We literally came from Japan. But they're like, no, but where are you really from? And we're like,
yeah. Wow.
Everywhere we go, pretty much. When we're in Japan, we are foreigner. When we're in Africa, they still treat us like a foreigner. Even in our own country, they wouldn't look at us like, Congolese people because we don't speak the local language. We barely speak French. Yeah, definitely. So it's like, okay, this is how the conversation usually went down. So where are you from? I'm from Japan. Where are you really from? Well, my parents are from Congo. Oh, okay, so you're Congolese, so you speak French, you speak Lingala. Like we don't. Oh, why don't you? Because I grew up in Japan. Oh, but you're not Japanese though. No, my passport is Congolese. Oh, but you're not really Congolese because you never grew up in Congo. You don't know anything about Congo, I guess. Oh, so where are you from?
I don't know, you decide. So that was like our biography. Every time somebody would say, hey, nice to meet you, where are you from? It's like, do you want the long story or do you want the short story?
Okay, wow. This is very intriguing stuff, right? Tell me about when you moved to South Africa. So acquiring, I guess, embracing the African culture overall and learning English. What was that process like for you guys?
Like, in Japan in high school, you start doing English. Okay, apparently now you start from kindergarten,
Yeah,
but back in
kindergarten.
those days, you only started to study to learn English in high school. So I could, yeah, I could barely speak. Like, what is your name? Hi, my name is Karine. How are you? Or this kind of thing. But then I couldn't make any conversation and so on. Let alone I couldn't read cursive because I didn't learn how to read cursive. And then my history teacher could only write in cursive. So imagine I couldn't read anything that he was writing on the board. I failed my test because I couldn't read. Anyways, it was tough. It took me like 2 or 3 months to start understanding what people are saying in the class. Now, one thing I could say is that, in Japanese education is a bit more advanced, I say, compared to Africa, I guess. So I didn't have to study mathematics and science the whole of high school because I've already done that in Japan. So I could just focus studying on English and yeah.
What about you, Natalie?
Well, like Karine said, the English lessons in Japan in those days only started in high school. So I was in elementary school. And as you know, even the Japanese language lesson, you basically can only read the newspaper after you finish elementary school or somewhere in junior high. So I was in fourth grade. So my Japanese level wasn't at a good level where I couldn't even use the dictionary to look for the words that I don't understand, right? Like Japanese to English dictionary. And basically, the day before school, just to give you a level of my English, the day before school, my mom said to us, write your names on all your stationery so you don't lose them. So I started writing in Japanese. She says, no, not in Japanese, write in the alphabet. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. So my mom actually had to teach me how to write my name in alphabet. And it was very tough in the beginning because you're a young kid, you want to play during break time. Everything that people are saying sounds like just mumbles. You don't understand anything.
I had to stay after school for English lesson while everybody was playing outside.
Yeah.
It was tough. I had to do that for 1 year or something. Yeah, extra English lesson.
Yeah, we had extra English lessons and we couldn't play as much as we wanted to because we needed to catch up because we were there on study visa. And I don't know if the law has changed nowadays, but in those days, it's like your visa was dependent on if you passed or not. So we couldn't fail if we wanted to stay in South Africa in order to renew our visa to stay even longer. So we had this like big pressure of like mastering it within a year and getting good grades so that we could continue to stay. So it was a very tough adjustment, but I think, and I used to just draw in class. I used to go to class and I used to draw because I never understood anything. I couldn't read, I couldn't understand what I was hearing, I couldn't speak. Like Karine said, only thing I could say is, hello, how are you? My name is Natalie. And that's about all the English I knew. So I used to draw, and I think about after 6 months, I could start conversing. I don't know exactly when I started understanding what people are saying, but I remember around the 6th month, my teacher made a big deal about the fact that I was actually speaking and holding a conversation. So I guess there's like a natural progression that I myself didn't really realize.
Wow, there's something that I see as sort of like an intersection with my daughter. She's 6, right? So she came to Japan like after like a little bit after 1, right? So like right now she's speaking Japanese, but there was a process where she had to learn because she knows English now, like because we speak English mostly. So she's really good in English. But she went through the same thing you went through to speak in Japanese, the same way that you learned English, right? So she did the same thing for Japanese. And one thing that you said, Karine, that I find very interesting is that you said you couldn't read cursive. And my daughter see me writing sometime, and she's like, "What are you writing with those squiggly things?" She can read English, but not cursive. So she's facing that same thing. So now I realize I have to teach her the difference and how to read that. So that's some good insight as well.
didn't even know which was B and which was D.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you guys face any bullying in South Africa? Like when you couldn't converse, what was that like? Making friends?
That was an interesting part. Like they didn't really bully us. They were just interested, curious, and asking
Okay.
million questions.
That we
That
couldn't
was,
answer.
yeah, we couldn't answer because we couldn't speak English. But I think that was the big difference that I felt. I was like, okay, here they're just so curious and interested, and they just want to know more. And in Japan, it was like, they would just ostracize you. But then in South Africa, they were just curious. There was, I don't know, that was, yeah, the big difference that I felt like, okay, people here are like, more open and they will just say what it is in their head. And I can also be, frank about things. In Japan, you can't be like opinionated, or you just cannot be different in any way. You cannot have an opinion. You cannot um,
Express yourself
yeah,
freely.
express yourself freely. Yeah, you had to be in a box that everybody understood. If you're not in that box, then they don't know, they don't understand you, and hence you'll be
Yeah, because
ostracized.
they don't understand you, they don't know how to deal with you. So the quickest way is to just put you
Yeah.
out. Yeah, that's, I guess, like the typical Japanese thing.
Yeah.
Okay. It sounds like you had a harder time carrying from what you said earlier, right? So, but as Natalie said, you paved the way, sort of, right? So you made it a little bit easier for her, to transition into elementary school, kindergarten, elementary school, and move through. So, did you guys miss Japan at any point living in South Africa?
Yeah. Definitely for me, especially because schooling was hard. I feel like the first year, maybe first year and a half or so, going to school was hard. Maths and science, like Karine said, I didn't really have to study too hard because there's just numbers. But you deal with a lot of language-based comprehension, poetry, and all these type of stuff, history of the world. Like in Japan, we only do geography and history of Japan. And now you're telling me about different continents. I'm like, wow, it's just like too overwhelming for me. So I think in terms of the academics was kind of hard for me in the beginning. Like I would say the first 2 years of elementary school was really, really tough for me. And I used to tell my dad, and I used to tell him that if moving to Japan is putting me in the category of a dumb kid, then I'd rather go back to Japan and be normal.
Oh, you mean moving to South Africa?
What I meant to say is if being in South Africa and being in makes me a dumb child, not being able to cope so well with the academics, then I would rather move back to Japan and be a normal student. So that's what I was feeling and expressing to my father at that time. But he always just reassured me that, oh, if you try hard enough, don't worry, you'll get over it. And yeah, it did get better. And I think for Karim, it was a bit different in high school, even the social scene, because your school, because then at that time, high school and elementary are separated, right? So I was in elementary school, but I think her school, it was integrated in a bit of a segregated way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But then in my elementary school, it was full on integration and the kids weren't necessarily ready. So you would have, like, let's say you have a PE class and you have to hold hands and make a circle or whatever the case is. And there was a kid, I remember it was like one of the first few months of being in South Africa. This kid who was a white boy didn't want to hold my hand. And he asked the teacher if he could swap position with his friend because he didn't want to hold my hand because I was Black. So then I asked him, because for me, I like, even though like Karine said, in Japan, we are seen as Japanese versus non-Japanese. And I've never been really treated for being different because I'm Black, like not to that granular level down to my skin color, right? So when this kid said he doesn't want to hold my hand because I'm Black, I literally asked the teacher, what does that mean? Like, I don't think my hands are dirty. I've washed my hands after break. Why doesn't he want to hold my hand? And she had a hard time trying to explain to me that, oh, you see, because you're Black and he's white. But later on, I understood that was the reason. And there was little instances like that that kind of reminded me of racism. And I felt like for me personally, being different in Japan was easier than being Black in South Africa at that time.
Okay. So Karine, so Natalie said that it was integrated but segregated in a way. Your high school, could you explain that?
So just like I said, because apartheid only ended like a year before we moved, and then the school only started out to accept children with colors.
People
I
of
guess
color.
people of color from that year
Yeah.
after the apartheid. So um, they didn't like fully integrate us. They still separated the kids into different classes according to the skin color, basically. But then they explained it as they they separated the kids according to their home languages, as in African, the kids who speaks African language at home and kid who speaks Afrikaans.
Yeah, it's like a South African language called
Yeah.
Afrikaans, which is a dialect of German, Dutch, French. That's also
French.
yeah. There's also French in there.
Oh,
That's spoken in South Africa called Afrikaans. It was like a
Yeah.
language spoken by the people who were the descendant of the colonialists, and yeah, it's
and the mixed.
in the mixed race people in South Africa. There's a mix. There's a race classification: white, Black, Indian, and colored. And colored people are people who are mixed race, as well as people who were brought over from the Malay and India as slaves, and also some Southeast Asian slaves that came from long ago. So that classification of non-Black and non-white people are considered as colored in South Africa. So
they
they
separated
speak Afrikaans.
Yeah, they speak Afrikaans, and they separated the classroom according to, well, Black children who speaks African language at home, and then this colored mixed children who speaks Afrikaans at home, and then now white children who speak English at home. So they didn't know which class to put me in because I'm a Black child, but then I don't speak any African language. I don't speak Afrikaans either, and I'm not a mixed child. And I can speak English a little bit, but I'm not a white child. So it took them a while to decide which class to put me in, but then in the end, they put me in a white children's classroom because they say, okay, at least, I guess the first language you should learn is English, so we put you in the English speaking class. That was their excuse. So here I am again, the only Black child amongst white children. And okay, that caused a little bit of,
Friction.
yeah, friction, a little bit of friction at the beginning from Black children, the Black classes and the mixed classes. And they were wondering why is this girl now only Black Black child in a white classroom. And I couldn't explain that myself also. I was just listening to people interact, talking about me, and then, I couldn't say anything about it. But yeah, after 2 or 3 months, then slowly but surely I could start explaining myself, and that's all good. But that was interesting.
Okay, how would you compare that experience, being in that situation and being in Japan? Which one do you think was better for you, or you felt more comfortable in?
I guess I felt more comfortable in South Africa because it's not like they didn't know what a Black person or Black child, so they knew what I was about. I guess they knew, I can't say they knew more than I understood myself. I can't say that. Well, they knew what a Black person is compared to in Japan. They don't know, like, they don't understand the skin color, they don't understand the difference in hair texture and so on. I don't know, I guess because we had an African parent and they were very outspoken, they were very different from Japanese parents, the upbringing is different. So you are used to expressing yourself at home. You are used to be, non-Japanese at home. And then you take that to school. And then here you will be like saying something or saying your opinion at school. And then people will be like, oh my God, she has an opinion, on top of the fact that she's not looking like us. She says what she have in her mind. In Japan, you have to keep your opinion to yourself. You have to just be polite and smile, no matter how unpleasant the situation is. You
Just blend in.
have to do anything at all costs to blend in and not stick out. But I guess our parents didn't raise us like that. So I think that was the problem every time we had to change school and trying to blend in. I was having difficult time blending in because I just didn't know how to blend in. So that was very tough for me in Japan. But then in Africa, it was okay to be yourself. No matter how they treat you, whatever, you just tell them like it is, how you feel, and then that will make you even closer sometime by opening up and so on. So I would I would definitely say that it was much more better for me in South Africa, even though I had experienced racism and so on, but as long as you knew who you are,
True.
yeah, as long as you know who you were, it was okay. But in Japan, even knowing who you are, I don't know. I don't even know what to say.
I said there's a limit in Japan, even if you know yourself and even if you know how to carry yourself, it doesn't really assure you of getting that respect back or that type of treatment back, especially as a young person.
Yeah.
Okay, so for both of you guys, when you moved to South Africa, living in South Africa, sort of, I guess, distilled your identity for you in a sense, meaning brought you closer to who you guys were. You felt like you knew who you were in South Africa versus being in Japan.
Yeah, for me, definitely, because in Japan, like Karin explained, you couldn't stick out. There's that saying in Japanese where you say, beat the nail that sticks out, right? So there was a limit to your individuality that you could have, and there was a limit to how you can carry yourself in public as well as in a group setting like school. So I think that there's when you're a multifaceted person, right? But in Japan, they're not that it's good or bad, they're very much monoculture. And they also believe in becoming a master of one thing. And when they do, they're even as a kid, they are taught that if you go to judo, you focus on judo. You don't play with piano, you don't try to draw anything, you do judo, for example, right? So they are taught to focus on one thing and become the master of one thing and not necessarily explore the different sides of them that makes them who they are. And I think those are the type of thing that place limit on us in terms of getting to know ourselves, in terms of likes, dislikes, what we are good at, what we're not good at, what is our passion and all that stuff. But then now coming out of Japan and being in South Africa, it gave us that freedom to explore ourselves because we saw that we were given the space and time to do so. And it was encouraged more than anything. So we could try a lot of things. I've tried sports I never played before, for example. And I think that's how we got to know ourselves better by a process of trial and error as any kid should.
Okay, so tell me about the transition now back into Japan, right? So you've gone through all this. You left Japan in elementary school, high school. You're accustomed now to South African life. So tell me about the moment you guys decided to move back to Japan. Karine, with you first. You said you moved back and you started working in 2007. What was that process like?
I guess at that point I was missing Japan, I guess, one way or the other. I guess I was missing the food. I guess I was missing the convenience of things and the organized life and so on. And yeah, Africa times moves much slower compared to place like Japan. And I guess I was wanting something a bit more fast life, as people would call. I don't know. So I told my dad, like, Dad, I think I want to go back to Japan. Like by then I finished my study and I graduated university and I was also doing some part-time job because I really liked doing nails. So at first, I wanted to do nails right after high school, but then my parents told me, like, you have to go to university and you have to finish university and then you can do whatever the hell you want. So I graduated, and the next day I graduated from University of Cape Town, mind you, which is one of the toughest university in Africa.
It's considered top 3 in Africa.
Yeah, and the next day, I went to a nail salon and applied myself for a job as a nailist. And my parents was like, are you serious? Like, are you serious? I'm like, I did tell you I don't want to go to university. But anyway, so I was doing nail. So I was working at the nail salon for about a year. And then, yeah, I felt like my brain was like going to sleep or something. I said, I need to use my brain. Like, so I told my dad, like, I think I need to work, do something
But you
more
worked in
active.
the IT first.
Yeah, I guess it was so boring. I can't even remember.
She was working
I
in the
did.
IT company.
Mm,
What is it called now? VeriSign.
I have no, yeah,
Oh
something
my
like
gosh,
that.
let me tell you, because she kind of auto deletes things that's no longer considered important in her mind. She worked in an IT company because she got an IT degree. She went to work for an IT company. She was working there about a year after doing the mail tech. Was it 6 months or so?
I think a year after I did the nail salon, when I said I need to use my brain.
Use your brain.
Yeah.
Then you went for the IT company. And then while working in the IT company, you told dad that, like,
Yeah.
I think I miss Japan
Mm,
and that you want to go back.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when did you finally move to Japan? Like, what was that like? Did you get a job before entering Japan, or you secured a job after returning?
Yeah, my dad secured me a job before I moved there because he was protective like that. He actually came to fetch me in Cape
Oh
Town.
my gosh. Because my sister could not, my dad was so worried that she's going to end up in a different country if she boards the flight alone, that my dad came to literally South Africa to pick up my sister. Like, he came for 2 days and packed, like, helped my sister pack up, and then they left together. He came to pick her up.
I was
Okay.
anyway. So went to Japan and then yeah, I started working in this company. Yeah, it was completely another different experience because you know in Japan when you're a child you learn certain type of Japanese, like it's like a conversational level Japanese. You can make a perfect conversation, but then now in when you start working in a company you have to use that keigo. So I felt like I had to learn Japanese all over again because I was talking like a child in a company where surrounded by a
Salaryman.
salaryman, normal adults. So yeah, I felt like I had to learn Japanese all over again, learning how to speak like an adult. Yeah, it took me a while to get adjusted. And another different thing was like I was a bit worried about this ijime thing, like bullying. But I'm like, first of all, it's not high school anymore; it's a company. So, um, yeah, there wasn't no ijime as per se, ijime, but then you know there are people. I mean, not everybody will like you. Some people don't like you, and then that's that. But then there was no ijime, the bullying, just like at the time I was receiving it in high school. It's just that again, they do not want you to have an opinion. You just have to smile and agree and nod to everything they say, and that is the challenging part even to this day because I just cannot do that. And but then
Okay.
this point, I think they now appreciate that from me. I think they feel like, yeah, Karine will say whatever is on her mind, the truth, as truthful as she can. And I think sometimes they even rely on me to say what's in my mind because they cannot say rude thing or unpolite thing. So they'll just look at me and then expect me to say it like it is on their behalf.
So are you at the same company that you started in at 2007?
Yes.
Okay. So Natalie, so you joined her at that same company eventually, but first I think you pursued your master's in 2009.
Yes, I actually started, yes, in 2009, I started my master's. It was a 2-year program, but I finished early, so I had the time to kind of take it easy because I was debating whether I should do a PhD program or if I wanted to join the adult world and start working. So for 6 months, I was just as any foreigners tend to do in Japan. I was teaching English while I was trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. And during that time, whenever I came to Tokyo to see my sister, her boss was having many events where he had a lot of foreign guests, like ambassadors and different CEOs and so on. And then during that time, he would ask my sister if she could bring me along to the events. So I could be like translating for the guests. And every time I went, I would have a conversation with him. He was a very friendly guy. And then one day he approached me and said, you know, this company is extending to overseas, and we'll be lucky to have somebody like you who's, you know, speaking both Japanese and English, so that, you know, we can kind of extend the team who could help us bring our business into abroad. And I was like, oh, that sounds exciting, because I figured project management is a skill that is applicable in any field, even though I didn't come from the industry in terms of my educational background. I thought it was a good skill to learn. So, and I accepted and I joined the company, and my sister was my direct boss for 2 years.
How was that?
It was in retrospect, it was very good, but during that time there was a mixed feeling, because I am who I am and we are who we are, we're sisters. But now I am who I am, Karine is, we are who we are, but now in the Japanese company where we are expected to act a certain way. And I also had the whole transition of, because the last time I schooled in Japan was fourth grade, elementary school. So my level of Japanese was like, you know, beyond, it's like kiddies level, and I had forgotten some. Like I could get around, but like, could I write a whole A4 document in Japanese? No, because my university was international. So I did my master's in English. So
Okay.
even though living in Japan, I was attending international schools speaking English throughout the day. So I was living in Japan, but living in a bubble inside Japan. So I wasn't really in Japan until I joined this company, where I had to now go through what Karine had gone through, transition from like not just the language, from like kiddies language to business language. And I've never written anything in Japanese since fourth grade, elementary school, to now writing documents and reports and things in Japanese, not just in Japanese, but in Japanese, where I actually submit to different stakeholders, where it actually has to be in tip-top condition, no margin for error. And, you know, coming from South Africa, Cape Town is a beach city. So you can imagine everybody's laid back. It's all good. You know, the sun is shining. What's the problem? Coming from that kind of attitude to this very square and very tight, an environment filled with certain level of expectations and no room for creativity. Oh no. No room for error, no room for nothing except for what's being given to you as instruction. And as Karine said, the only response that they want from you is hi, with a smile on your face. You know? So that was completely different to what I've been used to, where, you know, I'm a very expressive person. I like to discuss. I have opinion about everything. And, you know, I like to hear opinion from others. And there's no discussion. Everything is one direction coming from top down. Everything is an instruction or demand. And as a person at the bottom of the pyramid, like myself, like every time I open my mouth, I would get the death glare from my sister, like, don't you do it, you know, because she knew. But I was like, no, but what I think is, and she was like, no, you don't have to think anything. And like, it was like a very big adjustment process for me. And I think she really helped me know the ins and outs. Not that I managed to fit in completely, but like at least I didn't end up stepping on as many people's toes as I would have without the guidance. So yeah, so it was like a good learning curve having her, because I had another senpai, like a Japanese person who was like who was mentoring me within the company, but like she couldn't teach me how not to be gaijin in the company. Do you know what I mean? So like she would tell me from the Japanese norm, which was not normal to me. And you know, the most difficult thing about the Japanese norm is many of them are not spoken. That whole anmoku no ruru, things that people don't put into words, but you're supposed to know because it's the norm. But how is it the norm if nobody tells you, right?
The nuance.
Yeah, the nuance that's in the air. Like, you know, so basically I used to get stuck with those things. Like, okay, so in this instant like this, what am I supposed to do? Like, am I supposed to do what they say, or are they trying to hint to me that I'm not doing what I was supposed to have been doing that they didn't tell me anyways? So, you know, those type of thing, like I would be like, so Karen, what does this mean? This person said that. And I think they don't mean what they said. I think there might be an underlying thing. She's like, no, this means that, or this means that. So like I'd have to like put through Korean filter to understand the Japanese business world, because like the world of Japan as a kid or a student is completely different in the working world.
Okay, okay. So wow, that was a lot. You can see the difference, as you said, right? So based on what you guys shared earlier, growing up in Japan now to working in corporate Japan. Tell me a little bit, Natalie, about when you decide to move back to Japan. Were you talking to your sister and you're like, you know what, I think I want to come back? What was that process like?
Oh, the day that it was decided for her to go back to Japan, I think I cried for 1 week straight. Like we've never been apart. Like the furthest we've been is when you moved to the dormitory when you were in university, which was still in the same city. So it was like 30-minute car ride.
It's because we were the only constant
Yeah.
within our life.
Yeah.
We moved from places to places, and we were the only constant thing. We were the best friends.
Yeah, we were each other's friends, best friend, everything. Yeah.
So yeah, it was pretty hard when I decided to leave SA. Well, I was excited to leave, but then once I got to Japan, I was like, oh, well, where's my sister? Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, it was really hard. So I said to myself, I'm going to graduate. I'm not going to play around anymore. I'm going to finish uni, my undergrad, and then join to be in Japan to be with my sister. But like, I had my own aspiration as to what I wanted to do with my education. So I knew I wanted to get master's first before I started working. And then there was an opportunity, not a nail technician, no. I wanted to be, I don't know, I wanted to be in the research field as well. So I actually went to the university where my father was teaching in the south of Japan, in Kyushu. It's a Ritsumeikan university that's actually based there, but the international branch. So he was teaching there at that time. So he said, well, if you want to study in Japan, there's international university where you can study in English instead of Japanese. So I said, okay, cool. So I worked hard, finished my undergrad, went through the interview process, got in, and started schooling in the island in Kyushu. And as often as I could, I escaped to Tokyo to come see my sister because I just missed her so much, So I think I left behind in South Africa 1 year, 1 year or 2 years.
Well, it's only 1 year.
I think it was 1 year or 2 years.
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah, 2009.
Oh, yeah.
Do you guys think having your sister at the same company, helped you a lot in that environment?
Oh, yeah, definitely. How about you?
Yeah, emotionally, definitely.
Okay.
Like we do come out to fight for each other, but we also do fight with each other.
Okay.
Like because we've been our own best friends for so long that we actually understand each other so well that even though we're in 2 different departments, whenever we want to like brainstorm and test ideas, the one person that will give me clarity, and I guess for her as well, we run to each other and say, hey, I just want to run a quick idea by you. Can you just go through it quickly with me? And it's like, then we have that reassurance because I know how she thinks and I know what she means when she says this, so I could advise her accordingly, and she does that to me too. So that is, I think, a very big forte. And for other people, maybe it might be a bit annoying because you fight with one of us, both of us will come out. So that might be a bit difficult for them, but for us, for me, it's been a good support structure and a good teacher too when I joined earlier on.
Okay, so Karine, so you said emotionally, in what ways?
I guess because of how I grew up and what I went through when I was a child at school, I have a tendency not to make so much friends because I don't need all that drama anymore. So I don't really make so much friends, but then it's nice to have that one person that I trust, and that one person I can just just be who I am unapologetically, and know that she will not judge me for who I am and so on. That is very it helps a lot, especially in this country where you basically, it's like me against the world kind of situation on a daily basis. So yes, of course, definitely it helps a lot to have somebody who is like your BFF, your sister, your family. So yeah.
When you say you against the world, could you articulate that a little bit differently? Like, what do you mean exactly?
Because first of all, you're an African, Second of all, you are a woman. Third of all, you are Black. All that, is like all against me as a Black African woman in Japan. And,
In the corporate
in the
world.
corporate world, in Japan, it's still like male-dominated country, and there's so much. I mean, there's so far as to where women can go. Like no matter how much you contribute to the country or to the company, you cannot go beyond certain point just because you are a woman.
Yeah, and also the age.
And also the age, and you're not Japanese. Well, now I am, but then you don't look. All kind of thing is against.
Yeah, it's like many companies, especially when you're looking at Japanese companies who's been here for ages and ages, they still function in the Showa level of like over 30 years ago, where the company environment, not just in ours, but it's the norm in the corporate world in Japan, where they have a certain image of what a woman's role in the company is, what a man's role in the company is, as well as what people of certain age does, as well as how long you've been in the company. Therefore, we allow you to have this much responsibility. There's a lot of filters and criteria that they go through in order to say, yes, you're the man for the job, whether you're already doing the job or not. And I think that's where it feels like you, even if you're doing the heavy lifting, you're not always either recognized or given the permission to step into certain tables to discuss because of all these different factors.
So tell me, so in 2016, did you guys become Japanese citizens in the same year?
Yeah, we applied together.
Okay, so tell me about the decision to actually, go all the way to become Japanese citizens.
Well, growing up here with Congolese passport, first of all, I was born in Congo, and that is the only time I was in Congo. And then yet I have this Congolese passport. And, any passport from Africa, I think, has so much restrictions when it comes to traveling. You have to apply for visa to go to even, I don't know, anywhere. You have to apply for visa. And there's no guarantee if they're going to give you a visa or not. And yeah, and it was so weird for us because we're like, we don't really know Congo, but then our passport is Congo, and
it was strange.
It was really strange for us, not
especially
saying that we don't feel proud of where we are from or anything. It's not about that. It's just the fact that we feel like
we know Japan
and
relate to Japan more.
And relate more to Japan, even food and everything. And yet we have this Congolese passport that we don't really know much about this country and so on. So it felt like a restriction and so forth. And our father always told us to eventually get a Japanese nationality, because you can't possibly continue to live in Japan where you feel like it's a home, and you can't be living here on visa. Like this
doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. So, like you mentioned earlier, our father passed away in 2015. Yeah, and just before that, he did remind us again and say, you girls need to get your nationality, and that was one of his last thing he told us that you have to really do. So after he passed away, and we felt like, some safety blanket had been ripped off of our head, and we felt like an orphan and everything. And we're like, we need to get our nationality sorted, because
we said to ourselves, because before we always had dad as our security, right? And now we don't have dad. And if anything happens and we get deported to Congo, we don't even know where to go from the airport. So we're like, no, do you know what? This nationality thing that dad was talking about, like, we really gotta get a move on.
And so a few months after he passed away, we applied for nationality.
It was difficult, right, with the Congolese passport, because they let's say we will land in a country and they'll say, okay, what part of Congo did you come from? You're like, no, obviously, looking at my ticket, I came from Japan, or I'm going to Japan. But then looking at our passport, they already had like a preconception in their mind about how they're going to treat us, And for me, it also restricted me for work, because I was on the project for France, And I couldn't get the visa for France, even though I was holding the meeting for the whole team, for the construction team and so on in France, and I couldn't go. And it was such a mess. And for my company, they didn't understand this concept of I need a visa to go to France, where it's like, but why aren't they just giving it to you? Why didn't you just get it? And like, there was like a mismatch. And we were just like, do you know what? This whole admin thing can be simplified if we have a Japanese passport. It's not like we are throwing our identity away, because we will always be DNA wise, as well as in our heart, Congolese. It's just a piece of paper that allows us to, number one, call our home, which is Japan, and doesn't restrict us in terms of movement when we're going abroad.
Could you tell me about the process? What was it like? Was it difficult transitioning into the Japanese nationality?
The documents.
Well, she think it was hard, but for me, it wasn't really hard. It was just a matter of collecting the right document and submitting it.
She says it so simply, but we had a file this thick per person of documents that we had to collect, each document from different government entities. We had like over 60 pages of documents to submit, as well as 4 A4 page of handwritten motivation letter as to why we want to be Japanese. So it was not a simple process. I'm sorry.
Okay, so what were some of the documentation that they required?
You basically have to show them from the moment you were born until up to the time that you are, like every single document from birth certificate to
proof of nationality, proof of tax.
Every single address that you've lived in Japan to be accounted for
with proof. Like, so knowing we moved every 2 years.
Yeah, imagine. we had to like dig up
dusty documents. Yeah. And we also had to show proof of tax, since we are working people. And we also had to prove that we have no criminal record. And we also had to prove how many times we've been in and out of Japan with date.
And also certificate of nationality from your country, which we had to like ask for people to get it from us back home.
Back in Congo.
Okay, it wasn't so simple, but yeah.
So it took a long time, maybe a few months to acquire all these papers?
Like 6 months to acquire everything. Like in the meantime, we have several interview process. They will check if the document is like
on point. Yeah.
So we had to do back and forth about 2 or 3 times until the document was like fully satisfactory.
And then once it's submitted, it's like a big black box. You don't know what happens. You don't know how far it's going along. They don't give you any information. And if we all knew that if they reject, they don't give you a reason why you're being rejected.
So you can't leave Japan.
Oh, and you can't leave Japan. You can't leave Japan longer than 100 days or something.
180 days.
180 days. And each time when you leave, you have to report the fact that you're leaving. So they actually pause your process. And when you come, they restart the process. And if you were caught outside of Japan without telling them, they can cancel your application. So, you know, me on my job, I used to travel a lot. So I was very wary of being outside of Japan, and they will give you a good countdown. Okay, the last time you actually went for 14 days, meaning you have however many days left. And then if you go in this time for this many days, okay, that means you'll have however many days left before your application is denied because you've been out of Japan for too long.
Okay. So. Wow. It sounds like a lot. So when you finally received, I guess when you were approved, right? What was that like?
She was busy having a lecture, some speech.
Oh, yes, I was. Sorry, I had forgotten. So I was invited to be a guest speaker at an NPO, and I was speaking about a project that my father was doing in Africa, as well as our partner, blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
So I was talking.
She was talking, and I was supposed to take pictures and take videos. And then, but in the meantime, I'm busy checking on a daily basis if our name is now on the list as, you know, people who became Japanese and nationalized. So my father's friend who read the newspaper and then said, your name is out, you are Japanese. And then I was like looking at it and I saw my name, I saw her name, and while she was making a speech, I'm like,
Yeah, I'm getting distracted.
and then she won't know what she's saying. So I'm like, okay, let me Google Japanese flag. And then I put the Japanese flag on my phone and I'm like, you know, and she was like,
I was just trying to go through my speech. This girl's waving her phone, and I'm like, and of course, people on the panel was also looking at her because we're trying to understand, like, is there an emergency? What's happening? And after the speech, people are trying to talk to me, and my sister's trying to pull me away, like, come here.
Grabbing her out of the room, and I'm like, oh my God, we're finally Japanese.
We were screaming in the corridor, needless to say.
Okay, so when did you feel like, I guess a weight was lifted off your shoulders at that point?
Definitely. The waiting period was a long time. And also because we didn't know how long it's going to take. And we didn't know if it's going to be yay or nay. And yeah, and during the whole time, we were just praying every day. Like, I wonder if today's the day we're going to find out. I wonder if today's the day we're going to find out. So there was a lot of anxiety involved in just waiting on the result. And yeah, when it came out, it was so relieving. And I guess also there was a part of me that was proud of ourselves for doing it ourselves, because we didn't hire an immigration lawyer, because my dad told us, like, you girls can do it. And we're like, if daddy said we could do it, we can do it. And we did it. And we really did it. So we felt like one of the homework that he had left us with, we did it. And like, I think we were happy for the whole of us and what it meant for us moving forward.
Yeah, also knowing that finally we can call this place home.
Yeah.
Now that we don't have to be living on visa,
Okay, so what was it like traveling with your Japanese passport?
I breathe.
No, but like every time when we have to show our passport,
Oh yeah, there is a bit of a shock factor.
they'll be like,
there's a bit of a reaction. I think I've always had a good treatment. There's a shock, and then there's a curiosity, and there's like a congratulation or like some kind of sharing of joy. That's usually the progression people go through at immigration, except for when I went to Hawaii, where they were actually very apprehensive, and this woman thought it was a fake passport, and she decided to speak to me in a very broken Japanese to try to see if I'm really, really Japanese. And yeah, that was like the only difficult thing that I had. But every other place, it's been a breeze. It's like how wonderful this world is when you can just walk through immigration knowing that they can't deport you just for the sake of having the wrong passport.
But now they think the passport is
fake. There's that, but it's like, yeah, try me.
How did your mom respond when you guys finally got your Japanese passport?
I think she threw herself a party. She still lives in South Africa. So we told her, we video called her, and we told her the day we got the news. And then there was a day we had to go fetch our official change of nationality certificate from the government. And then we called her again. And then we also called her 5 days later when we got our Japanese passport. And she was screaming on the other end of the phone. She was just very happy for us because she knew that this is basically our home and this is where we feel most comfortable. And she didn't want us to always have to wonder about where to be deported to. That was her main thing.
Okay, so any advice, like maybe lessons that you guys have learned right throughout your life? Growing up in Japan, you were born in Japan, Natalie, and Karine, you're pretty much you know Japan. You came here when you were 9, right? 9 months old, right? So that was like almost same thing, right? So any lessons, throughout your childhood in Japan, moving to South Africa, now returning to Japan, in the corporate world, now becoming Japanese citizens. Is there any lesson that you think grew out of just your journey together that you want to share with the world?
I don't know. It's like a dichotomy kind of situation. On one side, you feel like I'm foreigner wherever I go. I don't feel like there is home where I feel like,
fit in 100%.
I fit in. But then on the other side, there's a part of you that says, why do you have to fit in?
Yeah.
Like, it's okay that you don't fit in because everybody is unique. So I don't know, living in, I don't know, what's the lesson? I feel like it's okay to not fit in, even though this country requests people to fit in a box. But then because of my experience, I understand that you don't need to fit in. You just be yourself, and you don't need to classify yourself like you are African, you are Black, because with my experience, I know it all depends on where you grew up. What do you know more? I mean, yes, I look like an African girl, but inside I am 70% Japanese. And yeah, like from a Japanese people, they'll feel like I'm not totally Japanese, and that's okay. And the foreigner will look at me like, okay, she's not really African, and that's okay. And I just learned to accept or love myself for being so unique, to the point that I look at it as an advantage, or as anything positive. Before, I used to feel like, I'm so different. I'm not like everybody, and I felt very uncomfortable with it. But then as an adult coming back to Japan, and because I lived in SA and had a different experience from what I grew up in Japan, yeah, I feel okay to be just me, with no box surrounding like I'm this, I'm that. No, I'm just me with all kind of mixed upbringing, mixed culture, whatever. And if you don't like it, well, if you like it, well, ask me more questions if you're interested. Good. But I'm just very comfortable with, yeah,
Yeah,
not fitting in the box. It's okay not to fit in the box.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I feel like the lesson that I learned through my life experience is that same, the whole thing of not fitting in anywhere, and that's what makes me who I am. And if I wasn't who I am, I wouldn't be able to give what I give. So my unique experience and my uniqueness and my crazy weird mixture that I am as a person allows me to see things from different perspectives, allows me to understand and relate to different people based on where they are, because I've been exposed to so many different cultures and different people and different language. So I feel like that gives you a bit of not a superpower, but like being unique gives you your own ability to relate to other people and make that relationship with the people around you and the people that you meet. And
which comes in handy at work, because
and in life in general.
In life in general too.
Yeah, I feel like that whole being uniqueness and your journey that brought you to where you are right now, you gotta trust your journey, because your life experience, I personally believe, is being designed for you, and it's for your own good, for your highest good. And I believe that whatever that has happened added to who I am now. And now as the person that I am now, I can give more freely and more generously my time, my attention, my affection, and meet people who they are. And
I think it makes you less judgmental about other people. There's no time for judgment. Like, who are you to judge first and foremost?
It's like, so what?
And it's just pointless. Okay, so your skin color is ABC, and then you state that fact, and then
it's
what?
Like, so what? Okay, you're purple. Okay, thank you. So what? Okay.
And so what?
It's like not a factor.
Like, think about it. So you are Black, okay, and so
yes,
like
yes,
stating the color.
It's like saying the sky is blue. Okay,
and then what? That is where it ends for us, you know. And people should just realize that stating the skin color, and then what?
Yeah. Because you're not your color, you're not your hair, right? You're inside.
No, it's your inside. And it's like telling me that the sky is blue today. Yes, and it might be gray tomorrow. So what? Like, so freaking what? How does that affect your life? How does it affect my life? It doesn't, because if we relate to each other on human to human level, what is the color of your eyes? What is the color of your skin? None of that matters. What really matters is, are you a good human being? Do I like being around you? Yes or no? Are you doing harm to other people? Yes or no? Are you being the best version of yourself? Are you giving yourself the way you should? Are you applying what you have learned in your lessons? Are you sharing the life in terms of the value with people the way you could? Yes or no? Like, okay, my complexion is brown. What does that have to do with anything? Nothing.
Mhm. And do you have any advice? I know that you guys may have indirectly shared some just now for someone else who might be in your position, right? I feel like uh, the way that your parents did it, like growing up in Japan and then leaving to South Africa and then coming back, it gives you guys a well-rounded, I guess, perspective, right? Because you grew up until high school, elementary school, and then you got another experience. So now you're versed in both languages, you're versed in both cultures, right? You have more of a worldly perspective, and then now you're back in Japan. So I feel like it's maybe, I don't know, I can't say for sure, but I think it's one of the better ways to have this experience, right? For a child like my daughter, for instance, she's 6. She's been here since she was like 1 year and 1.5, right? And she's 6 now, and it's like, okay, I think it's the best way, because what I find is that when I talk to some people, like for instance, mixed Japanese people, some of them say that they felt insecure. They had some identity crisis. They looked black, but they felt Japanese. And some of them never had that international experience to sort of like balance them out in a sense. And I think the way that you guys experienced it and were brought up, even if it wasn't intentional, I think is very advantageous. I think that approach is. So do you have any advice for people who might be in a similar situation, or parents that are like your parents? Like, I guess myself and my wife, we're kind of like your parents in Japan right now. Any advice that you would share to the parent and the child?
That's very interesting. For me, in terms of the parents, one thing that my father told me when I asked him, I was born in Japan. Japan is all I know, but why am I black? Like, I didn't understand that if you have black parents, you're going to come out black. So I asked him, why am I black? I was born in Japan. I should be like my friends. And he sat me down and explained to me my roots. He explained to me the value of all my ancestors that is within me, the value of being black, value of being African, right? And he told me to be proud of who I am and to be proud of where I come from, even if I've never been there. That doesn't mean I don't come from there, and own it as part of my identity. And that I don't need to fit in because I wasn't made to fit in. And I think as a parent, I think it's so important to make the kids understand where they come from, because that's when I guess it kind of made sense to me as to not just why am I black, but what it means for me to be black, even though all of my friends weren't. And let me tell you, from the very next day, I went to school with my chin up because I was like, I'm not Japanese, I'm African, damn it, and I'm great. So it gave me a whole new sense of pride to know that I come from somewhere, and that somewhere is from love, and it's somewhere that is filled with people who's like me, who paved the way so that my father could be in a place where he could be, so that I could be in, like, the whole generational history. And that gave me a sense of pride to be who I am in a world where I didn't feel like I fit in, and the need to fit in subsided a little bit from there.
Okay, what about you, Karin?
I guess more practical advice would be like I would make sure that if my child, let's say, was born in Japan and having to go to Japanese school or something like that, I would say I would let them go to Japanese school up to the end of primary school so that they know how to speak and read and write Japanese, because
It's a plus.
yeah, if you stay here until end of the primary school, then it will be difficult to forget Japanese, even though they now go on to international school or study abroad in another language. But I think for the parent, I think it's important to like educate your children until the end of primary school so they can read a certain amount of kanji and so on. I think it adds more value to your children once they become an adult and then start working,
Yeah.
and then having that, extra language, not just speaking Japanese, but also can read and write Japanese on
Yeah.
top of another language. I think that's going to be a plus. I think that's one thing that I feel like, I have to like consider also if or when I raise my own children. I think it's just a plus for the child to know how to read and write, not just speak
Yeah.
Japanese, and also another language, most definitely, not just Japanese, because being a foreign or mixed children and then not being able to speak any other language besides Japanese,
It
that
limits
is
you.
no for me. I think it limits you, and and in Japan, and they don't really accept, foreigner or mixed children just like Japanese people. So you're gonna have to have something extra
to make yourself marketable, I guess, also in the workforce.
So for me, that's one practical advice that I feel I can give to the parents. And as for children living here, mixed foreign children, I think it's much better now compared to the
Back in
time
our days.
we were kids in Japan. Because now there's many foreigners, there's many mixed children.
There's even foreigners on TV.
On TV too, So I don't want to like say it's easier now. I'm not saying that, but I think like people are a bit more familiar with foreigner or with mixed children that they're not too, I don't know how to say this. They're not too,
like, we're not treated as aliens as we were back in the days, per se.
Yeah, I guess. So, and it's okay, like be proud of your mixture, your root, whatever it is. Ask your parents why you are like that, where you're from, where the parents are from, what language they speak. Like just know your culture, embrace your mixed culture. And this is, I think, as a human being, it's better to know many cultures and broaden your horizon than just being have just one singular culture and idea and you don't know anything else about it. You won't be able to adapt to situation as quick as, it's always a plus to know many other culture and languages. I mean, it might be hard as a children, but then best be assured, like as an adult, everything becomes to your advantage.
Yeah. I think it's so easy to want to fit in and to be like everybody else when you're younger. But then when you start to recognize and appreciate every single thing that makes you you, whether it's the color of your skin, the texture of your hair, the fullness of your lips, whatever it is that you feel.
People pay to have lips like this now,
Just saying.
Appreciate it.
So I think appreciating everything that makes them them in terms of their physical appearance, as well as their personality, as well as their background. Because for us, we used to even get made fun of for eating African food at home. But like, right? But then like that makes us who we are because we are African. And I think appreciating that as something that, as Karine said, broadens up your horizon and makes you a fuller person. And that makes you more easy to relate to people from other places. So it gives you an unfair advantage per se, because now you have a perspective, a vantage point that is way different to people who's only been exposed to one set of culture, one set of people. And the fact that you can appreciate the difference within you means that you can appreciate the difference in other people. And that makes you more global in this world where it is an international world. There's no such thing as like borders in the sense that it was before. And I think if you are not able to survive in this global platform of this new way of living nowadays compared to before, I think it puts you as a disadvantage, even as a young adult, or even as a corporate person, or even as an entrepreneur, whichever route that they choose to take. And for that reason, they should just embrace who they are, work on their strengths, keep working on their dreams, and in retrospect, it will all make sense.
Okay, so one thing I want to ask as well is it's about the dating in Japan, right? What was that experience like for you guys at this part, right? Coming back to Japan, working, going to university. What has dating life been for you guys?
Oh my gosh. A joke. Sorry.
Okay.
Dating life, for me, I think it's like, how do I say this without being too harsh? But I think okay, let me put it this way. I think it has been a joke, but it was a big learning curve in terms of statistics in Japan. So basically in Japan, let's say 80%, let's say even 90% of men in Japan are Japanese. Out of the 10%, you have the foreigners. Out of that 10%, you have about 50% who are American people who are here on military duty, right? Who they may stay here for 2 years or even as short as 3 months, and then they're gone, right? Can you consider them? Maybe yes or no. And then you have the other 50% that makes up of the rest. Out of that 50%, about 10% are people here with contract, short-term contracts, 6 months, 1 year, 2 year for international companies, for example, city banks, blah, blah, blah. And they are gone, even embassies. And then they are gone, right? And now you're left with the remainder, who are foreigners who are living in Japan, half of which, more than half, let's say 60% or more are Southeast Asian, who are already either married back home or married here, right? And now you're left with the remainder, 40%, who are a mixture of people from everywhere, including Africa, Europe, USA, blah, blah, blah. But most of them, the reality of Japan is you can only have Japanese visa as a student, as a married person or a working person. In order to have a study visa, you need to be a student, right? You skip school for a few months, they'll kick you out, you don't have visa. So meaning the people who are here for long-term are either working visa or married visa. In order to have working visa in Japan, you need to have the ability to read and write in Japanese, to have a day job so that you can get a working visa in Japan, which most, if I say 95% of the foreigners who come here don't have the ability to do unless they are English teachers. So now you're even looking at the smaller portion of the greater whole, right? So now you're left with people who are what? Married to Japanese people with visa. So with that as the background, you can imagine how fun it was playing the Russian roulette of love.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. That was a mouthful. So that's if you're targeting foreigners, right?
Yes. Oh, and let me get to the Japanese men. So you have 70% Japanese men who are scared to approach women. And as foreign women, we are used to being approached. If you're used to growing up abroad, you don't go to the men and say, hey, most of the time it's the other way around, right? 70% of Japanese men don't approach women, or they don't fancy, or they don't approach foreign women. Now you're left with about 30% of Japanese men who are going to kind of profess their feelings to you, but in such an indirect way that you actually don't know if he's serious or not, because they want to play it safe, right? So you don't know what you're dealing with. And then you have those one who's willing to profess his undying love to any foreign girls that walks across the room. So that's the statistics.
Okay. So where can people find you guys online?
Well, I'm mostly active on Instagram, and my handle is I am Natalie Sanga.
Okay. And Karine?
I'm also on Instagram and on Facebook with the name Model B.
Okay, so it's Modelle, right?
Yeah, that's a nickname I got in high school when I was in South Africa.
Okay. So Karine and Natalie, thank you so much for sharing your stories. It was very, very insightful for me. I'm sure it was also insightful for everyone watching. Guys, this was Karine and Natalie's story, growing up in Japan, right? Being born in Japan and growing up in Japan as well. Very unique story. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please give it a big thumbs up and remember to subscribe to this channel for more videos on the Black experience in Japan. Until next time, thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Bye.